So Lou, I was able to be there last night, and 39 years of the long love. And you go through those, so many decades, and the film is held up so well when you watch it.
It's amazing. It's evergreen. I walked in from the Q&A last night, and you get a theater, a 260-seat theater that's 2/3 full for a 40-year-old movie.
Right.
And what I loved was that a few dozen people had not seen the film, so there were still some wiping away the tears at the end because you didn't know how it ended, did you?
I've seen it 1,000 times, and still when Connie breaks down, it's not my Richie. There's something
it's
about
Rosanna.
it. It's bone chilling.
I got chills just now. It's Rosanna's performance. That's what gets me all the time.
Yeah.
And it still gets me too, because it's Luis Valdez did such an amazing job in crafting that film. And that's a huge challenge when you know the ending of something. You know the end of Titanic. You know the end of a lot of historical films is to get you invested and then obviously pull the rug out from you because you got so caught up in the story itself. And it does. It holds up. It's generational. When I go to fan cons, I'm so gratified when somebody says, "I watched this with my grandmother." My family would get together and watch this, like once or twice a year, and so after so much time, I realized the reach and the scope and the heart of the film, and that's why it's relevant today. These are the dreams of a young farm worker. Pursuing rock and roll, pursuing the American dream, looking for this seat at the table. I think that speaks to a lot of young people today as well.
And I think even the theater changed something. I've seen it so many times, obviously at home and now watching the theater. You kind of took something different from each character. Like I actually really felt bad for all more than I ever did. So there's different things you kind of pick up. When you go through and people come up to you now, is there something very meaningful that along the way that really stuck with you and so they watched along that?
That film, and it's interesting. It's really beautiful. There's another film coming out very shortly called American Chupo, the Legend of Luis Valdez. The documentary premiered at Sundance this last year. I was there. Eddie almost was there. And Luis Valdez, founded the Teatro Campesino with his brother Danny. And I don't that veracity, that you're looking at a very specific community with a very universal story. And like I said, it's about the heart, it's about the family, the fact that Luis chose to tell that story through the family, through the competitive brotherhood, of he and Bob, and that time, that time was an innocent time, and obviously our times are much more complicated now, and yet there's a purity to that story that is so effective. There's a lot of cinema these days it is cynical. It's even my movie Gangland is coming out. There's a lot of rough edges. There's a lot of grit and texture. There's something about La Bamba that is so hopeful and so optimistic and cannot help but touch you, no matter what community you come from. And I think especially today, one of the biggest messages of that film is that we're all alike. We all have family. We all have, dreams and aspirations. We all want to take care of our loved ones, and this is so deeply, part of the message of the film. And that's why I think it continues to resonate.
Absolutely. Now, I was shocked, Lou, that film was not nominated in 8. You could have gone everywhere from the score to the wardrobe, to the directing, to everything.
Yep.
It shows where the Academy and where someone was in that time.
This is exactly what I'm talking about, and I just got re-elected governor, and this is one of the missions, is to platform and to elevate, the filmmakers, the storytellers from every community, certainly every marginalized community in the United States, but globally, and I think we're doing that. And I think if, La Bamba had come out now with more of that awareness, more of that sort of, grassroots groundswell of support, it would have been a different story. I think Luis's script should have been, nominated. Sylvia Vega Vasquez could have been the first, Mexican-American costume designer to be nominated. Carlos Santana, and that score. And people have said for ages that Isa's performance, should have been recognized. So one of the things that I've been talking about in promoting, American Pachuco is just that. That film, I think, at this stage, finally gives Luis his flowers. Because the and Sue before, these are seminal films in the Latino storytelling pantheon. I think it's still the highest grossing Latino themed film. And both that one and Stand and Deliver, are in the National Registry of Films for their cultural impact, and their artistic achievements. So I think we are at a point where we're recognizing a little bit more, the contributions of the many different voices we have out there.
Many steps, but where do you think we need to go to keep elevating?
We need to, we're on the path. I mean, many people would say we're not there yet. But I point to movies like Sinners, or Parasite, which won, from South Korea. The fact that a couple of the nominees for Best Picture were international films, The Secret Agent and Seminole Value, that we are seeing more diversity in our nominations, including the technical, and that's what we need. It's not just the actors, I mean, as selfish and self-centered as we can be, we need female cinematographers. I mean, think of this, groundbreaking the cinematographer one and writers, directors, producers. We are seeing, more women. We are seeing more people from marginalized communities, and that it's staying the course and doing that. I am currently the chairperson for the Equity and Inclusion Committee at the Academy, and we'll see. I'm up for re-election. We'll see that, but I just got re-elected governor. But this is part of my mission to uphold the Academy's mission. And to celebrate film, and every filmmaker out there has a seat at the table.
And you've done so much. And when you look, 4 decades, that you've been in this industry or more, what would you tell your young self, Lou, because you, not only are you doing so much, as an actor, but you're also doing so much your activism.
Fortunately, the acting and the activism all started before, the Bamba shot me out of a cannon. I was very, very fortunate in that respect. These were things that were ingrained in me and part of, who I am. I'm one of those insecure actors, that it's like, oh, when are you going to work again? Every 2 jobs, you're unemployed, right? And I think if I were to go back, I would say relax, believe in yourself, stay the course and follow your heart, and I think it probably would have alleviated some anxiety along the way.
And you talked about what was instilled in you, your support system. You mentioned your mother. Who else supported you along the way during this journey?
Well, it's funny because in Gangland, there's a lot of my dad in that performance. He did 2 tours in military guy, Navy guy. A lot about duty and honor and living up to your word and all of that. So when I got to Hollywood, and having grown up in Texas, I had I think some values already instilled in this, so therefore it didn't get pulled into the dark side as much, which you still see a lot of people do, and I look back now and my goodness, I mean there literally are some actors that are no longer with us. Some people that I started with, some, by their own hand, and others, that didn't deserve it. Patrick Swayze's gone, Bill Paxton's gone, Luke Perry, these are all friends of mine, And so, it's feeling grateful, and we talked about it already as well, that giving back, is incredibly necessary. So, and then I really have to mention, teachers and mentors, and, I had some incredible high school teachers, some wonderful teachers in college. Adam Rourke, who started the Film Actors Lab here in Dallas, I was one of the first students, and eventually became a teacher, so I was able to take, the sort of theatrical dramaturgy that I learned at the University of Texas at Arlington and apply it to the camera. That's what Adam is really, really good at. But Adam, he was, I don't know, such a brass tacks, bottom line kind of guy. Lou, here's what you do. You know, you show up to set on time. You don't eat the cruise food. Learn the lines, hit your marks. You know, I was one of those guys, right? And really instilled in not only me but a lot of his other students. You know, the fact that it's a craft, it's an art. You know, it's not summer camp. You know, you have to work at it. You have to be disciplined. So you know, I've carried that with me. And you know, sadly we lost him while I was doing the King and I on Broadway at a young age, which is a shame because ended up talking to Quentin Tarantino about, you know, if ever was still alive, I think Quentin would be using him in his films today.
And you talked about teachers and mentors. Any other actors you think along with it kind of took you under their wings, especially you're an actor?
Eddie Olmos, most certainly. You know, I mean, Edward James Olmos. And once again, here is, you know, intersectionality between art and activism. You know, Eddie was very, very involved, still very involved, you know, in empowerment and, you know, in supporting, you know, especially, you know, Latino, you know, filmmakers and artists and writers and whatnot. So I'm going to see him next weekend, actually.
Are you?
Yeah, I'm going to a FanCon in New Orleans, and Eddie will be there, and we'll do the whole Stand and Deliver reunion and, you know, a bunch of photo gallery opportunities. But, you know, and we've stayed very, very good friends, you know, for a very long time. It's interesting. I've never worked with him, but I was partners in the Tribeca Grill in Manhattan for 35 years while we were open. The pandemic killed us, but you know, that's Robert De Niro. He is an idol of mine, you know, and somebody that I've looked up to. I mean, people ask me, you know, what made me think that I can get into movies, you know, and it literally was, you know, the holy triumvirate, I call it, you know, from the 70s, De Niro, Pacino, Lion. And I looked at those guys and went, okay, these are dark-haired, swarthy guys carrying movies, character actors, you know, not Robert Redford or Paul Newman, and it's like, if I can become the kind of actor that they are, then I think I've got a shot.
I love hearing all these stories. If you weren't, I have to ask what was other interest of yours? If the acting, let's say you didn't have the passion for it, you know, or it didn't work out. What were you gonna, you know, what was the God those good?
Probably writing, you know, I've done, you know, a few screenplays. I have two books that are out there, The Tinderbox Soldier of Indira and The Tinderbox Underground Movement, both illustrated by my wife, Yvonne. I just finished my third book, which is something that I wrote in college, was always a great, you know, story. But I look back at it now, at the really pretentious 20-year-old that I was. And I read some of this stuff.
I was going to say, look at the script, wow. Wait a second.
Wow, dude, you were full of yourself. You thought you were it, didn't you? And a lot more seasoned now and a much better sense of humor. And so I rewrote this novel that I wrote in college, and it's actually really quite good. I turned it into my agent already, but there's a possibility somebody's already looking at it before it gets published to adapt it into a film. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. So yes, I've continued to write. I've gotten back to it, and that was one of my first passions. You know, but if I weren't being creative, or if I weren't being a storyteller, you know, I'd probably be a chef. You know, yeah, you know. I mean,
he brought me no breakfast.
I am so sorry. Yeah, I don't have a kitchenette in the room. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
No question.
But yeah, I mean, one of my first you know, gigs was as a cook's assistant on the Navy base in Corpus, and then you know, I was a breakfast cook at a little surf shop in on Padre Island called Jitto's. I don't think it's there anymore. My first brush with fame was Willie Nelson came in with the munchies at 9 in the morning. I made him a Van Baron.
Did you?
Yeah.
Olympia. I made sure to love Olympia. I would have to say it.
That's exactly right. And would, you know. And then I flew burgers at Whataburger. Crew chief
really?
employee of the month. That's right.
Wow. Why did you do it all? And speaking of being in Dallas, your career started basically in Dallas with, you know, the Bamba started here. So when you come back to Dallas, a lot of memories.
A ton of memories and a ton of friends. A lot of people who still live here, you know. So premiering Gangland at the Dallas International Film Festival. James Faust I've done forever. Michael Caine I went to college with. My buddy James Healy was there. We were in the theater department together at UTA, and he's in the movie Gangland. But I've also directed him in a number of television shows. Bull, East New York, which I wish would continue. The Cleaning Lady. As talented as he ever was. And then just other friends that live in the area. So it always feels like a homecoming, when I come back to this area. And, I work at, in Fort Worth.
Yes.
The last time I was on stage was doing Miss Saigon at Casamayan. Wally Jones out there is fantastic. I did The King and I in North Carolina under Wally's producership at one point. But, there's exciting stuff happening, in the Metroplex. And it's the dream that began there in the day. We kept thinking, okay, Third Coast, we're going to make movies here or whatever, But, Taylor Sheridan has certainly proved that this can be a filmmaking hub. And what I love about it, I went back a couple of years ago and taught a residency at UTA, for the theater kids, for the musical theater kids in the film department. And I was saying, you guys need to get together. Okay, young directors, you need actors, go be in these guys' short films, get some experience, and also giving them the sense that this is possible. Maybe back in the day, when I said I was born to be in movies, everybody was, are you nuts? Were you crazy? How's that ever going to happen? But now I can literally, point to, down the street, here's a studio. Okay, they're making movies. Get an agent. Take the steps necessary to get on a movie set, to learn, stay involved in theater groups or in acting classes or whatnot. There is a pipeline whereby you can become a professional.
Yeah.
And I think it's important that young people understand that. That there is, opportunity here, and you don't need to take no for an answer just because you live in New York or Hollywood.
And you can see the whole state. Matthew McConaughey following the Texas Village, and Taylor Sheridan. You see it eventually growing to be a mecca of...
I hope so. It's interesting because just now, Texas is jumping on to the incentive program, and I shot Young Guns 1 and 2, Longmire in New Mexico. New Mexico figured it out a long time ago, and they made millions. They're continuing to make millions of dollars. Oklahoma, where we shot Gangland, same thing. They're jumping on that bandwagon, and I feel bad for LA, but the production is going elsewhere, and they're going to places like Oklahoma. Gangland wouldn't have the kind of feel, the grit, the veracity that it does, the connection to the land. We shot on Cheyenne, Arapaho land, and it's an indigenous, film. If we had not been in Oklahoma, so Oklahoma and the Oklahoma film crew really shine in this.
I want to talk about Gangland. That's why you're here, but I want to kind of get some other storylines for you. How do you resonate with this character? Because you have played so many detectives, cops, sheriffs, that's kind of like something that I feel like is so easy, but this one's a little different.
Yep.
How does this resonate to different from your other roles?
I played so many cops.
Yes, I
know. But each one, it's like there has to be something to hang my hat on. I don't want to play the same cop every single time. Just like I don't want to play the same, Native American. Lakota is different than Navajo is different than Cheyenne. Mm-hmm. It has to be specific, And at this point in my life, people say, well, what did you prepare for this role? It's like, I lived, because part of this character's presence, his being, is the mileage, how he still gets up every morning and has a mission and goes out, to do it. He's been beat up. He's seen, so many things. He certainly has a very, realistic view of the situation on the reservation, but also the situation of laws themselves and how certain laws are not, just laws there, And that's the beautiful conflict between him and Donna Namra, who will be at the screening tonight for the Q&A as well. She's by the book, and she goes, well, why don't we do this way? We're supposed to be doing this. It's like, that don't fly on here. This is a different world, and he's taken that time to understand the community and understand the people and understand the root of what led to this gang phenomenon on the Reds. And that's the beauty of it, is that, this story could apply, like Stand and Deliver Bamba, you have a very specific story with a very universal theme. It could apply to the South Side of Chicago, it could apply to East LA, it could apply to Asian gangs in Seattle, Cuban gangs in Miami, whatever. It has a universal resonance to it. But this character, I played so many cops. So it's like I've been on so many ride-arounds. I've been in the range, I know the drill when it comes to that, so to speak. I'm adopted into the Lakota and Cheyenne nations for the work that I've done, Cheyenne specifically for Longmire. And as soon as I read the script and they asked me to be the executive producer as well, I said, I'd love to bring in my guy, Marcus Red Thunder. He was my technical advisor for 6 years on Longmire. And I said, he will really tweak this script and make it that much more authentic.
I was going to say authentic.
Yeah, and so there's so much, and I spent quite a bit of time on reservations. There's so much about this guy that I didn't have to acquire. I didn't have to manufacture. It's like, I know this. I know this guy, and even like I said before, my dad, I've been around military guys my whole life. I've supported first responders, worked with so many cops and so many different kind of cops for all the roles that I play. I get their sense of humor. I
know my dad
carry
can
themselves.
Oh, there you go. 47 years undercover narcotics.
Right. So there you go. It takes a certain type.
Yeah.
And all of that. It's one of those things that you tell young actors. I mean, the best way to act is to not act. It's just like, okay, here I am. And one of the things that I love about a number of reviews talk about how lived in, this character feels. And it's because I knew the guy. I didn't have to. There's no artifice there.
One thing I do about Lou is a lot of your movies, you gain knowledge from them, and so this is not any different. That you're talking about, some people are going to watch this, viewers are going to watch this and learn something about the Reds and so many different components that you're speaking of.
I mean, once again, here we go with a film that can be inspirational, educational, as you said, and at the very least, make you look at somebody else's path in life and walk in their shoes, for 90 minutes or however long the movie is, and that brings understanding. I don't know if we'd be as divided if we could actually, sit with one another and come face to face with one another and deal with each other as human beings and understand that, we have so much more in common than we have, separate. And yes, this movie does, teach those things. And it's thought-provoking. I was talking about, the neo-Western, as it were, Longmire's the neo-Western. Everything Tudor Sheridan is doing is a neo-Western. And they said, well, what's the difference between this and the classic Westerns? Other than being shot in black and white, they were black and white. Good guys, bad guys, black hat, white hat, And now I remember, Little Big Man was a huge touchstone for me. I just was like, wow. Look at this story from so many different perspectives, and so many lives that he led, and that's what we get in here. I mean, Vincent Grayshaw says it, wonderfully. It's like, Teddy is 80% white, 20% long, and Richie Blackline's played by Elisha Black. He's wonderful. Is 20%, right, and 8% long, but he's 20% right, and now all of a sudden you're looking at somebody who's got a point of view that is valid, that is legitimate. It's somewhat twisted. It's certainly tainted, with bitterness and with anger and all of that. But now you have a movie where all of the characters have a point of view and have a story to tell. Donna Namrod's new recruit. She's not just this Wookiee 90 years girl. There's a story there that informs her as a female cop. So there's a beautiful, complexity to the film.
What can you speak on your cast, for the different actors actually that are in this movie that we can look for?
Well, I think,
coming, all of it.
Oh, absolutely. First of all, Nick Stahl had worked with Vincent before, and I love this when a director, brings somebody back because they had such a great experience. So Nick is fantastic in the film. And then when it came to casting the other roles, I recommended Jaime Bedard and Kim Guerrero, both of whom I've worked with on Longmire, and I've known Irene forever. She's so good at this movie, heartbreaking in this film. one of the, I think, great experiences and hopefully consequences of this movie is that we're seeing these young indigenous actors getting a break. You know, I mean, Leigh Factor had that Reservation Dogs, and really it was a standout in that, and he's fantastic in this movie. And I hope we talked about it on set. I hope being in this film and seeing the success of this film encourages him to keep acting, because he was like, do I want to do this? And you know, and he's at that age where he could go off and do something else, but he's talented, and I hope he pursues it. But then we find, and I remember it vividly, Vincent calling me and going, okay, I found Rachel. And I said, really? He says, yeah, I'm going to send you an audition tape right now. And so we sent me Elisha Pratt's audition tape. I watched it, got chills, called him back. I said, lock it in right now. Because Elisha is a breakout, I think. I think he's a real discovery in this movie. And once again, I hope this gives him a future career. And what's funny is that so many of these people, like Tate Weinland as well, Mike Tubby, his first dialogue ever, in a movie. A lot of these actors were background actors, on Killers of the Flower Moon, shot in Oklahoma. So they've been on set, they were around De Niro, they were around Leo DiCaprio, Tommy Schultz was so sweet, saying he'd rather hang out with me than Leo. So, all right.
I can see that.
But just this entire ensemble of actors just nail it. I mean, they're just so wonderful, and it really it tells the whole story. It's not just one person's journey in this. The writer Six Killer, fantastic in the movie. So like I said, all these guys are
before that.
They're getting opportunities, that they didn't have before. I hope, it's always a dream, when you're trying to build a career as an actor, that one good performance will at least get you another job. And that's how you build a career, just, by building that resume, by building that reel, and going from one job, and, nailing it every time,
When you speak of that, and you mentioned last time the Q&A, Miami Vice was the Miami Vice, then you stand a little bit. It's amazing how that works, because you had no idea.
No.
No,
we talked about it. I made like $6,000 on the Bamba and gave half of that to my mom. Yeah. And so, and even with three other roommates, sharing rent, I was out of money by December of '86. And we filmed La Bamba in '86, was coming out to August of '87. So it was like, okay, well, I guess I'll go back to Texas, and because nobody was going to hire me. I went on auditions and stuff, but I was, an unknown kid from Texas playing, forgive me, but an obscure Mexican-American rock and roller who was sort of a footnote in the Buddy Holly story, and so nobody was going, well, this kid's going to be a star, and so I wasn't landing any jobs, and then all of a sudden I actually read for a show called Crime Story that was set in Chicago. I was too young for the role. Bonnie Timmerman was the casting director, and she also cast Miami Vice.
There you go.
So in January of '87, I land Miami Vice, make as much money on that spot as I made on La Bamba, and I had one scene with Eddie Olmos. Now Eddie had done Zuzu with the Valdez brothers, so he was very familiar with La Bamba. And so he knew I was the kid that, was playing Richie. And he thought, okay, this kid might, blow up, who knows. I had one scene with Eddie, and Eddie says to me, what are you doing next month? And I won't have lunch, and he writes down and he's making a movie next month, and it's his very work, you should be in it. Here, call this guy. And he gave me Lou Menendez's number, who was the director of the film. And that's how I ended up in Stand and Deliver, And so what's interesting is that with both La Bamba and Stand and Deliver in the can, still didn't know whether or not those films were going to be hits, really didn't.
And now?
Not until I stepped under the Young Guns set did I feel like I had arrived,
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I want to go back to Gangland. When the viewers watch this movie, what do you want them to take away from your character?
Here's a guy and the metaphor, it hits me every time I watch the movie. Vincent has these beautiful shots. Once again, this vastness of Oklahoma, of the police cars just going through these desolate areas, going through, the reservation that is a little economically challenged, and it's interesting because that lone tribal police, car, is the Lone Ranger. He's out there, doing his best to cover his territory and to keep it all together and to take care of his people. He really does live by the protect and serve motto. And he has, not necessarily a fluffy, warm way of doing things. He's very blunt, but his mission is very clear. And his commitment to the people and to the community and in healing it and in trying to break the cycle, of hopelessness and violence. There's a lot to respect and to love about Teddy, and doing it all the while having his own personal demons that become another layer in the film. Without giving too much away. Teddy is doing it all the while being burdened, by what he perceives as the mistakes of his past. So once again, a lot of people love, my character like Andy Stanberg in Longmire, who is a paragon of virtue, loyalty and bravery and courage and all of that, with very little, darkness. Yeah. Teddy is much more complicated than that, and therefore, incredibly realistic, when it comes to, what's put upon cops, So, there's a lot to admire, in this character and in this story. Irene Bedard's character, basically the mother of the community, taking in, displaced kids, and just really, there's a lot to reflect upon in ourselves and how we, deal with people.
Without any spoilers, being of the Oklahoma Reservation Zone, and what kind of obstacles, are there any obstacles you dealt with while filming?
Well, the weather. Man, we were in pre-production, and Marcus and Vincent and Cole, they have a mission. We went out to dinner one night, and the ice storm blew in, while we were at dinner, and I had never seen streets and sidewalks look like glass. We were walking like, the Tim Conway character, from Carol Burnett, a little, shuffling because, you were gonna, go ass over tea kettles, like that. And then, some days on set were just, they were just frigid, And this is a low budget movie, man. We don't have the big cozy, trailers and the warm, puffy, warm-up coats and everything. We were challenged by that, but the crew, man, everybody was game. All the actors, nobody ever complained.
I think it makes it more authentic, though.
It's sort of like forced method acting. When they say whether you are whether. I did the 33, the Chilean miners with and we shot in real lines. And once again, we talk about an actor not having to act. It's like, you don't have to pretend you're in a mine. We're in a mine.
You don't have to pretend you're claustrophobic. You are.
Exactly. So it's the wisdom of having an open heart and mind and using those assets that are at your fingertip that inform the veracity of the story.
Lastly, I have to ask you, people look back, your legacy, how do you want you to be remembered?
Wow. I'll tell you two stories that to me really encapsulate, what I've done that I didn't even know at the time. I wrote a movie called Ambition, and my leading lady was Cecilia Tech, whose father was ready to retire. And went to dinner with him one night, and he said, "Lou, you put me in mind of my friend Tony Quinn." And I was like, "Oh, wow. If I'm the Anthony Quinn of my generation, that's fantastic." We see now much more authenticity. We see now much more, diversity in people playing the roles that they should be playing. Back in the day, I was ambiguous brown.
I was just
You
going
know,
to say that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you know, it's like the UPS motto. It's like, what can brown do for you? You know, but you know, there was a little.
Passing all those different.
And you know, Anthony Quinn, who played, you know, Greek and Latino and Native and,
Yes.
you know, Inuit. I played all those things too. And I've been a representative, an ambassador, an ally, if you will. And the one thing that I would always do is that, you know, I would approach each of those roles with respect. And what I can say is that, you know, unabashedly now, I mean, you know, growing up in Texas, you know, toot your own horn, you know, pat yourself on the back, being military, you know, a little bit of, you know, humility goes a long way. But yes, I did help to open up, you know, doors. And through what I'm doing today, you know, whether it's in the academy or producing, you know, these films or writing and directing as well, you know, I am making sure that door stayed open behind me so that, you know, other actors, you know, and actresses of color and, you know, they get an opportunity, you know. That has been, you know, one of the, I think, hallmarks of my career. That is a fringe benefit of my representation. And the other thing, you know, that I hugely espouse to young actors is don't become a hyphen. Don't become, you know, the best African American actor or the best Asian American actor. Become the best actor with a capital A. And so one night I'm in Hollywood, and there is Sidney Poitier with his wife. And I'm like, whoa, you know. And I see the wife sees me, recognizes me, nods, and I think, okay, I can go over. I wait until they finish eating. For those of you out there who catch me like, you know. So I got up, and of course I went over and I gushed, and I said to him, I said, sir, I mean, honestly, you broke down the door for everyone. You changed the face. You specifically changed the face of the leading man to where people like me could now be a leading man in movies. And Mr. Poitier, in his infinite kindness, compassion, and wisdom, he put his hand on my shoulder and he goes, Lou, you're a leading actor because you're a good actor. And I was like, oh, this is funny, Dad. You know. But I mean, that's just it. It's like, you know, focus on the work, focus on the art, become the best that you can be. You know, don't be the next this or that. You know, be the best you. And that is how you know, make yourself unique. You know your own brand. You know how you come off. You know, what audience is seeing you. You know, and it didn't take that long, quite honestly. I mean, but it's what I espouse, and it's what I live, and once again, trying to lead by example, you know, to you know, young people out there who have an interest in doing it, you know. And so those two things, I think, you know, I hope are a big part of the legacy that I'll leave.
I want to end on one thing. We have a national audience, but the Dallas audience, Cowboys fan, you're the Cowboys fan. I know it's tough being a Cowboys fan. You gotta mention them. Who was your favorite player growing up?
Oh my God, yes, Roger Staubach. I mean, come on. I mean, the man was you know, larger than life, and yet here you go again. You know, somebody who I imprinted on at an early age, who just went out there and did it. He didn't brag about it. He wasn't you know, controversial. He kept his head down and he went and he did his thing. You know, and there was something so honorable in that, you know, and inspirational. So yeah, it was exciting to watch.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Lou. You've been amazing. I've watched you forever, and I just to be able to sit with you and hear your stories. And I thank you so much for your time.
No, thank you for the time.
And so we're excited to watch Gangland tonight.
Yeah.
Tonight.
Yeah, I will see you tonight.
Yes.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And so yes, what's wonderful is that at the Studio Movie Grill, we're doing the Q&A tonight. Donna's going to be there. My buddy James Heenan.
Yeah, I didn't know. I thought it was you.
No, Donna's coming in. She's working in Oklahoma, so she's coming in tonight. But this is the Academy qualifying Monday. We'll be playing the Studio Movie Grill 3 times a day for 7 days. So they're going to continue to screen it. It's also running in Tulsa at the Circle Cinema, I'm going to say. Is it the Crescent Cinema? It's something that goes like that. Okay. But also next week in Manhattan, we are doing a very intimate Q&A at the Metro Private Cinema, and then it will be on the Metro Private Cinema. What an incredible concept! There are a number of rooms. You can have 4 people, and then you order off the menu what movie you want, or you can have 20 people, and and an incredible, like, you know, 5-star dinner menu, you know, with an open bar. I mean, it becomes this whole evening experience that you can, you know, have friends in. And Gangland will be on that menu for 2 months until September 3rd. And then we also have a great one-night really special event screening at the Roxy Cinema in Manhattan. So
nationally, does the play, the
Yeah.
places, okay.
Yeah.
In LA, too, are we gonna see it in LA?
only for the Academy right now.
Okay.
We did some screenings at the Lanley,
Oh, yes.
Novo, and Santa Monica. Who knows when they add anymore?
Yeah.
I should also mention it's running for a week at the Picture House,
Okay.
which is an art house movie theater, you know, with subscription, you know, audience at the Picture House in Bronxville, which is in Westchester County, just outside of New York. And I'm making plans with a wonderful, wonderful lady named Crystal Echo Hawk, through Indigenous House. Yeah, and we're going to screen it, hopefully run it in Santa Fe, probably in August. And that may lead to more theatrical runs on reservations. You know, take it right to, you know, it's, you know, the audience that it speaks to.
That's why I make sure everyone knows where they can use it.
Exactly. And well, it's on video on demand
Yes.
on many platforms starting July 10th.
July 10th.
Yes.
Okay, so that's the big day.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for
Thank you.
seeing us tonight.
Absolutely. I'll see you again tonight as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.